What's up, guys? Let's talk Minetest modding. Okay, guys, we are on to chapter 3 of the Minetest modding book by Rutan Wardi, and you can find that by Googling it. Minetest modding book. Now, this chapter covers nodes, items, and crafting. So let's start with this section. What are nodes and items? So there are some broad categories that every single thing in the game is put underneath. One of these is items. Another one is entity, and the last is object, I believe. There could be more, but for now we're going to be focusing in on item. So what are items? Well, item, for instance, in this chapter, they're talking about nodes, craft items, and tools. So nodes, that we have been, you may be slightly familiar with. We made a example mod and built a node, and we're able to put some random skin on it, right, of your choosing. And so nodes are, the whole world is made up of nodes, blocks. And every single space in this virtual world, this voxel world, has to be filled with a node. And if it's a blank space, then typically that's air. It's an air node. But the environment is made up of blocks. These blocks, of course, you can break. You can put into your inventory. You can use them to craft items and whatnot. Now we have craft items, and they are basically anything that you can pick up. For instance, a craft item, I believe, could be if you were to hit a mob, they drop an item, and that item you pick up. It can't be placed like a node in the world, unless you're talking about like a pedestal, but that's different. And then you can have them in your inventory. You can use them to craft other items. And so they're kind of useful in that sort of category. I don't know how to characterize that category, but it's basically an item that cannot be placed, just used. So it's used to get something else, some other node ultimately. And then lastly, we have tools, and those are also items. Just like craft items, they can't be placed, but they have more use than a regular craft item, in that you can right and left click with them and they do something special. Okay, so scrolling down to the next major section, registering items, we see here an example of registration of a craft item. So this code right here, as hopefully you might have guessed, goes in your init.lua. So this well, you can place it in your init.lua. That's not where not the only place that you can put it, but for now, that's where we're putting all of our code. And of course, we start by we want to register some item, some craft item, something that is going to be used, right? It's a craft item. You know what that is. We want to register one. So we need access to a certain machine called register_craft item. And where is that machine? That machine is in the Minetest mod, or the Minetest warehouse, if you will. So we designate the warehouse, and then the period is a part of the syntax, and then we identify the machine that we want to access and fill in the appropriate information. So it's fairly straightforward. Right here we have the name. You know what? Let's take a second. So we see here an example of how they're using craft item. We can also read some information about the different things that they're using up until this point. We're not going to go past registering a basic node. But we can kind of read about the application and kind of understand what's going on. But I need to show you the framework or skeleton of this craft item. So this craft item machine, right? So you'll notice here that in the syntax form, we've got a parentheses. We have some sort of text right here. We have a comma, and then we have a curly brace. So all of this syntax is important, and let me show you why. For any of these machines, you can see a lot more information about these machines than this modding book will provide. For good reason. The modding book doesn't want to be encumbered by going into every single detail. Their aim and their goal is to cover the basics. But we want to go a little bit further. So we are going to, if you head over to Google and simply copy and paste, let's see if I have that last. Yep. So copy minetest.register_craftitem out of the book, Google it, and you'll notice that there's a wiki page that describes craft items. Now, whether this is an official document or not, I am not 100% sure. I know there's an API reference somewhere, book or material, but at any rate, I believe this is fairly valid. So here we have syntax. And the nice thing about that is that it just shows us the basics. No frills, nothing, just the basics. And we see here that, of course, you have minetest.register_craftitem. And then we have the parentheses. We have name. Bear in mind that by name, it's simply a placeholder. It's just sitting there telling you this is what goes here. Not name per se, but some string that holds the name, holds that value, right? So you're not going to put name there. You're going to have, in the example here, you see that for name, they put that, right? And that has quotation marks, semicolon, and other information. This is simply the skeleton, the very, very simple form, which just gives you the information you need to understand the syntax. Okay, so here we have the next, we have a comma, and then we have curly brace, and then curly brace. And so inside of these curly braces is called the item definition. And like I said with name, you don't write item definition. You don't just write that text because the server, that's not what it's looking for. But it's a placeholder and it tells you what is supposed to go there. So then the question is, okay, well, what is item definition and what is it supposed to look like? Well, if you look a little bit further down, it actually breaks everything down for you. So we have, name. And as you can see here, it gives you an example of what a name should look like. And then we have item definition is a table with the following fields. So you have a bunch of cubby holes, right? Table is like a box with cubby holes in it. So here are your cubby holes that you can access. You can fill description with something. For instance, a string or something more meaningful like my mod item, right? Item name, something like that. Whatever. We have groups, we have inventory image, and on and on and on. Let's stop at groups though and take a look. So we have, let me look at our Rudenwardy, and you notice that they didn't use groups. So it's like, okay, well, what does groups have to offer us? So my question then is, well, what is it supposed to look like? I know they tell me it looks like a table, but if you're not familiar with what a table looks like, or you're wondering what cubby holes are in that box, well, handy and very convenient. They give you a link, and you can right-click, and I would open it as a new tab so that you don't lose the current one. And you can look at groups. and it tells you what groups is and how to use groups. And I'm sure it goes further and further, drilling down to the basics. So that is one way to get information. The other way, if you're not sure what groups is you can get into your textbook here and find groups. They certainly do talk about it. Okay, so in this lesson, I briefly introduced you to what items are. I briefly introduced you to how to register a craft item. And then also, very briefly, where to go if you need more information, okay? So what are items? How do I make items? And where do I go to find out more information on how to make them, right? So 3 critical legs of this lesson. Now, assignment, pay attention. What I want you to do is actually add a craft item to your MyMod, or whatever you have called it. Add a register craft item. I'm okay if you want to copy this craft item, but stop. But wait, I'm sorry. Don't stop yet. I expect you to include something in this register underscore craft item. In for instance, this. It can't just be this. You have to fill another one of the cubby holes of the item definition. I think it is item definition description. So you need something else in here inside these curly braces. You need another line in here that further defines it. And so you got to go out. You've got to figure out what it is and add it to your craft item. That's it, guys. Get to work.